We like to hold them open apparently for a whole minute before we close it out. That's great. I appreciate everyone on the webinar answering the poll. That gives us the chance again to test it and to gather some good data from all of you. So I appreciate you allowing us to do that and for being part of our first poll. Technology is a great thing, and that's what we're going to talk a lot about today. You know, the topic that we're on today really focused on the new Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA, that was passed in late 2022, and that put a little over $11 billion to fund some clean energy programs. And I'm sure you guys have all heard a lot about that, you know, especially on the heels of the 2021 IIJA fund that was, goodness, $175 billion towards infrastructure. So all of these acronyms, all of this money coming out of the federal government certainly can be a little confusing, but truly it's a lot of great opportunity. And that's what we want to focus on today. You know, the money coming from the federal government is based on a lot of challenges that we see, challenges to become more sustainable and renewable, and to look at distributed energy and electric vehicles, and how can we as an industry and as a society do better. But, you know, with new regulatory requirements and now new tax incentives, consumer behavior certainly is driving some of the utilities, or all of the utilities, to again think back of how to reduce their footprint, but while at the same time continuing the transition to a digital grid, to the smart grid, to the IoT device integration. And that's what this panel of thought leaders is here to talk with you about today, about these funds, these investments that the federal government is making. But what does that mean for our utilities? What does that mean for a smart utility? And I'm going to start, I'm just going to introduce everyone, and then I'm going to let them give just opening comments, if you will, just to get us started. So on the panel here today, we have Ali Mohammed, who is the head of Digital Innovation and Transformation at New York Power Authority. And Ali, why don't you kick us off as the utility and just give us your opening thoughts, and then I'll move to the others.
Thank you, Bobby. Thank you, everyone. It's a fascinating time when we look at all these funding opportunities coming out from the federal government. You have the IIJA, then you have the IRA, and there's a lot more that's being worked on. You know, NIPA had began its digital transformation years ago, almost 6-7 years ago, and we see that a lot of utilities are actually heading towards that, especially with, you know, the pandemic. You see a lot of acceleration of digital transformation activities in utilities. And then on top of it, now you add another component of clean energy and those ambitious goals that each state has to meet 2030, 2040, 2050. While you're still laying your foundational infrastructure, it's helpful that from a funding perspective, you know, there's an opportunity for utilities to fast track some of them. But, you know, I think the biggest challenge is how do you prioritize your work? You know, there's a lot of opportunities out there, and there's a lot of commitment internally that utilities have to meet, whether it's from a regulatory standpoint, from policy standpoint, or even us being from the state, you know, meeting all of our state goals too. So I think it's great to see that the federal departments are actually putting the money out there. But I think it's a big question for the utilities to see how much can you do realistically, what's possible, especially with all the supply chain issues. Where do you want to focus on? What are your priorities are, and what are you looking to address at the moment, and go after those first. Now, the good thing is that you know, when you look at GRIP funding, the IIJA, they're all based on fiscal years. So there's opportunities for you to maybe skip a year, focus on the things you're currently doing, and then go for funding the following year. So there's some leeway there. I do like the approach, the way this was taken, and definitely it's like I said, it's an opportunity for utilities to accelerate some of these projects that they have. Otherwise, they would have to go to the PSC or the Public Utilities Commission for approval on the rate base. So now that offsets some of it, so it makes the business case real easier.
Absolutely, absolutely, Ali. We'll dig a little deeper into that, certainly. Chris Guttman-McCabe from Anterix, you're the Chief Regulatory and Communications Officer for Anterix, and clearly you focus on this a lot. Give us your opening perspectives, Chris.
Sure, thank you, Bobby, and Jitender. Thank you to you and Telit for hosting. I'm happy to be here. Bobby, I'm gonna sort of pile on to Ali's answer and say, to me, these three tranches of legislation and funding opportunities are coming at a really special time, right? The utility sector is facing a new reality, right? Ali mentioned it with regard to the need to really focus on decarbonization and the integration of renewables and digitization. At the same time, we have increasing and more sort of strident weather episodes. We have more robust cyber incursions. We've got wildfires out on the West Coast. And then we're asking for utilities to focus on decarbonization at the exact same time that we're pushing as a country and globally, pretty much as a society, to electrify absolutely every sector that we can, right? So we're going to put more stress on the grid at the same time that we're asking it to reinvent itself. And so I look at this, the IRA, as another really necessary tool in the toolbox for utilities. This one is unique to me because it hits both the supply and the demand side. So when you think of electricity, and obviously utilities are always thinking of trying to manage, the provision and the supply side, but they're always trying to recognize and maybe tinker with the demand side. The IRA is interesting because it combines a neat aggregation of tax credits, investment and production tax credits with support through loans and the loan program office, and then outright grants. And then simultaneously, you can break those three categories down into some of it goes to businesses, some of it goes to consumers, some of it goes grants out to broader, and then some of it goes, as I said again, to the loan program office. So to me, this is a neat new tool for utilities that desire to use it, but also for consumers. And it touches pretty much every element of the utility sector.
Absolutely, definitely a broad scope for this one that we're not as accustomed to seeing. Ron, you guys at Hitachi Energy clearly are looking at this. Give us a little bit of your perspective and background. Let us know your opening comments there.
Sure. Thanks, Bobby, and good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're dialing in from. And again, Jitender and the folks at Telit, thanks for hosting this. So but eventually we'll get into the wireless components, but I'll kick it off looking at the macro level of how Hitachi Energy sees this. So overall, we see a tremendous opportunity to enhance and innovate in the power grid's infrastructure, both through the IRA as well as previously discussed the IIJA. Today, I'll focus more on IRA because that's the newer funding source that we're looking at. And since we've gone through a high-level overview of what the program is, we'll focus on Hitachi Energy. We supply more than just the communications piece, right? So we are a key infrastructure supplier. And what are some of the key benefits that we see to our business? So first, significant opportunity, and Chris suggested this as well, in the extension of the production tax credit, as well as the investment tax credit for solar, wind, and storage. So Hitachi, we supply technology across our entire portfolio for all of these industry segments. So we expect a significant benefit for that. So as a supplier of solutions, it's an important part of our planning to make sure that we're aligned with the capabilities that the IRA supports. And then secondly, there's additional tax credits available to accelerate the growth of domestic manufacturing for renewable energy components. So we expect to benefit from that as well as we participate in solar, wind, and battery components. There's also another $10 billion in tax credits for construction facilities to make renewable energy technologies in domestic locations. That funding is still going to be under discussion. It's a state level of funding, so it'll take some time to see how it all settles out. But really, it appears that we'll be able to benefit from the available funding as we maintain strong relationships with local governments where we do have a significant manufacturing presence. So for us, we're excited about it in the supply chain because it's the supply side. It's a great opportunity for us to introduce innovative technologies to the marketplace.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you, Ron. And Jitender, Vohra, first of all, let me add my thanks to Telit Cinterion for sponsoring today's webinar, and give us your opening perspective and why this was an important topic for you guys to bring to the industry.
Yeah, thank you, Bobby. I appreciate everyone being here, the panelists, everyone that's kind of dialing in, and everyone that's going to listen to this recording later. So I think today I'm here representing my new company, Telit Cinterion, to talk to you about the windfall of opportunities for the utilities, including the energy sector, due to the huge investment the U.S. government is making in our country. As a result of all this, all types of new foundational technologies will need to be rolled out. And we at Telit Cinterion are uniquely positioned to be one of those key foundational technology providers for the solutions that need to be rolled out to make use of this investment. So you're either bound to run into us or the likes of one of us. So we're in a position to be more flexible than any other Western provider because we have a lot of experience in this space. We are privately held. We can experiment with different business models that have not been tried in the industry. So frankly, I don't think anyone else that is part of our ecosystem value chain can do what we're doing here today. So I look forward to diving into more details with the other three panelists as we go further into this conversation.
Thank you, Jitender. And I am going to stay with you. I'm going to push back again, push through on the topic a little bit. And, when we think about the Internet of Things devices, IoT devices, the smart cities discussions, the new cleaner energy, talk a little bit, if you don't mind, about how you guys see IoT currently being able to address some of the cleaner energy projects. So some of those IoT, what are you seeing strategically?
Well, I mean, today we've already enabled IoT projects, including smart metering, EV charging, gas distribution systems, wastewater. I think there's a bunch of areas, but I think, for example, waste management is a big one that's out there today with Big Belly Solar and their connected waste bins is one of our customers that replaced the traditional, trash cans at universities, for example. And another one has to do with wastewater management, right? So, and environmental monitoring, where we're checking to see if water quality with lakes and drinking water is safe. So these are some of the ways we're using IoT out there today, but obviously we're going to continue to invent and address more use cases, more applications.
Absolutely, absolutely, that's great. Chris, so from your perspective, leading government relations at Anterix, what are you seeing regarding the intersection of these policy efforts, IRA money, and the sector's push to modernize the grid? So spend some time, let's talk about this. I'm going to start with you, and guys that pile on at the end if you want to. Chris?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, thanks, Bobby. So I think Ron referenced sort of going back up to the macro level a little bit. I'm going to take it back up there for a moment too. We see if you combine all of the government efforts between the CHIPS Act and then the IIJA, BIL, and then this IRA, you see really an effort from the federal government to stimulate innovation, right? To accelerate technology evolution. And one of the things that I found really interesting in the first iteration of this, the IIJA, is how many times the word technology or technologies were used. If you look at the 4101 and you look at 4107, they for the first time, really, the legislation focuses on the evolution of the technology platforms of utilities to address a wide range of issues, whether it was wildfire mitigation or integration of distributed energy. So, from my perspective, and I know, Bobby, you and I worked on it, and Ali and others, many of us worked on getting language specifically into the IIJA. I was ecstatic that it happened. To me, it was as if we worked to set the table for the utility sector, and if they decide to participate, they now have the opportunity to enjoy the benefits of this funding. The IRA just followed through on that, and when you combine the both of them, I mean, it's solar, wind, water, geothermal, storage, EV, and then you get into the IRA, and it's also the consumer goods, right? I got this really neat thing I was telling everybody about in my mailbox at my home in Asheville, and it lists all of, for a consumer, for a homeowner, it lists every program where you can get money, tax credits or incentives or direct payments from the federal or state governments with regard to modernizing and making your home more energy efficient. So, you know, to me, that's really exciting. At Anterix, what I love about it is I do truly believe the underpinning of all of this evolution is broadband. And I believe strongly that the utility sector, you know, fiber where you can get fiber, and secure, robust wireless broadband where you want to push it out to the edges. And you know, I hope Anterix, I believe Anterix is in a great position to commercially to succeed. But the reality is this is coming. And when we were up on Capitol Hill, we were pushing on an open door, because I think everyone in all of the offices at the Department of Energy, you know, they all recognize that the underpinning of a lot of what we're talking about is data, and the movement, the capture, the analysis, the aggregation, and the action upon data. And that means broadband. So to me, what we saw from a policy perspective, it was the underpinning of the reality of what is going to happen from an operational perspective with utilities.
No doubt.
Let me jump in a little bit, Bobby, and build on some of the things that Chris said, where it's good to see linkages between what some of the policy initiatives are and some of the solutions that are starting to become available in the marketplace, specifically on the wildfire mitigation side. So one of the things that we've been working on at Hitachi Energy, and we're not the only ones, but you know, we feel strongly about it's an important piece of our portfolio, is a wireless enabled, whether it's private LTE or other wireless technologies, a spark prevention unit, right? So protects surge protectors or surge arresters from over voltage conditions. And again, this is something in the early stages of rollout, but with programs like the IRA, we can get through a proof of concept a lot more quickly to make sure that it meets the solution requirements that utilities have. And with that, when it's deployed to solutions like this that are wirelessly enabled, because the wireless piece is important, because you're talking about feeder lines and distribution lines, right? So it's not cost effective to look at fiber or other copper technologies to roll that out, but it really optimizes the maintenance portfolio. So I think the key thing, and one of the really neat things about this, is we're seeing a linkage between the R&D investments that we're making and the policy statements that are coming out of the IRA and IIJA. So it's great to see that coupling.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and Bobby, if I could add really quick on what Chris mentioned, like what you got in the mail. I mean, clearly, you know, I'm looking forward to checking my mail today too, but clearly this is going to cause entrepreneurs and integrators that have been in the margins, right, in the industry, you know, in this space, in this sector, to kind of jump in the mix. So this is probably going to cause a spark to innovation, you know, areas that we don't even know about, right? Certainly in things like cogeneration with solar or wind. But I fully
use this spark though.
Yeah, exactly.
Using the word spark.
There you go. I'm fully expecting people to be knocking on our doors that would traditionally have not knocked on our doors. You know, basically with what's happening with all these, you know, the funds and everything going on. So this is going to be very interesting times that we're in.
Agreed.
Just to add on one little thing, Bobby, you know, Chris mentioned it, right? It's driving innovation across, you know, whether it's utilities, whether it's manufacturers, you know, OEMs, everybody. But I think one thing that we looked at UBBA was, you know, let the vendor ecosystem, the partners, understand what the utility needs are. So I think that's an opportunity, and you know, industry-wide, where you know, utilities already have a 5-year strategic plan, a 10-year strategic plan. They have goals mandated from the states, so they know what they have to do. Working with the developers and the manufacturers in achieving that innovative goals, I think would be much needed over the next, I would say, few years.
No doubt, Ali, no doubt. So obviously great opportunities, but are there particular challenges that we're going to face with this increased investment? And I'm throwing that out to everybody. Ron, I'll start with you if you want to talk about challenges.
Sure, and I think, you know, clearly what we've spoken about throughout this is communications. So I want to keep it linked to communications as much as possible. But I think, you know, one of the key drivers is distributed energy resource management. As we look at it again at a macro level, that's driving one of it. And one of the things that's happening as part of the challenges as distributed energy becomes introduced is the energy flows are a lot more variable. So the stresses on the system change dramatically, right? So as we introduce these additional options for generation throughout the edge of the network, it's going to have to be connected. And as part of that connectivity, it's going to need to be connected with robust communications infrastructure, right? And in addition to that, and I think from an industry perspective, where private LTE plays a critical role, is we're talking about something that's 3GPP standardized. So you've got billions of devices in the ecosystem. Now, they're not all applicable to what we do in the utility space, but you've got a very broad and challenging, robust ecosystem to build upon. So I think one of the key things is the communications component of that is really starting. It creates the connectivity to really support distributed energy resource management at scale across broad-based utilities. So to me, that's one of the key challenges is how do we quickly and efficiently provide this connectivity? And a solution like private LTE really enables a fairly quick rollout and provides the capability from a technology perspective to support, you know, the new energy flows and all the new capabilities that we need to bring into the grid to support renewable integration.
Yeah, those two-way flows, absolutely. Go ahead.
Yeah, and Bobby, you know, the integration of distributed and renewable energy is an incredibly important use case, but it's just one use case. Like, and it is incredibly integral, transformational, maybe even existential going forward. But then you start to think of the other use cases that are supported by broadband and how they are equally integral, right? You know, enabling a more cyber secure communications platform, supporting mutual aid and more robust resilience and grid awareness and situational awareness, and you sort of can go on and on. The interesting thing that we found is because there is now a recognition that communications is no longer you know, a component of your grid performance, but now it's a key component, maybe a foundational component. We're finding that as utilities think through it, it becomes a more complex decision, not in a negative way, but in a what are the suite of use cases that we have to look at, and those evolve, whether you're, you know, Ali and the team, and you've got NIPA's water management and generation and transmission issues, or you're, you know, an IOU that is more focused on the distribution. So, you know, we're finding that the reality of what utilities are facing is making some of these decisions more complex. Ultimately, I think in a very positive way, but it is a more complex decision.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Jitender, I know Telit Cinterion, you guys have been working with some utilities already on some of these same topics. Can you give some examples further about some of the challenges, but then, you know, also the solving of those challenges that coming together?
Yeah, I mean, I think yeah, we're kind of changing our approach as we transition to this new company and how we're working with current customers. So our approach with these customers is more advisory and as a trusted partner, right? So right now we go beyond just being a technology advisor. We're not just selling hardware modules. We're looking at the entire economic environment, as you can see by this webinar we're doing here today. Our intention is to offer our customers complete solutions, including non-technology elements of it. So that's some of the benefits we're bringing to our customers, and not only our customers, but our customers' customers. You know, this whole solution is very complex. You know, our brand promise from the beginning has been to mitigate the complexity of cellular, despite the quick evolution of the technology. So one example is kind of what we've done with Anterix in just a few months, right? So this is a benefit our customers can count on with Telit Cinterion. They can kind of walk to our doorstep with a vision as we evolve, and then we can work with them to kind of deliver our product.
Well, and you hit on it, a key phrase there, customers of your customers. And I think we've all been talking about that. And Ali, certainly at NIPA, your customers are very different from an IOU to going to the news. Talk a little bit about your customers' customers and your own customers and how that fits into this story.
I'll try to bring a different perspective. And I know Chris, Ron, and Jitender covered it from a technology perspective, but from a utility perspective, the first number one challenge that we see is doing all of these is resources, the manpower, the skill sets that are needed to even deploy all these infrastructure going forward, right? So when we look at these opportunities and truly evaluate and compare them with our priorities for Vision 2030, there are so many applications we actually did not submit because we don't think we have enough manpower to do everything. So we actually chose, battery storage is a couple of examples that we wanted to partner with. So we submitted 2 applications on that. We submitted an application on the Agile Lab, which is the Advanced Grid Innovation Lab for Energy. Couple options on EVs and other things, but it was limited on the number of applications we submitted. The other challenge is that once you are a primary applicant, all the audit and requirements, the compliance requirements, it falls on you. So NIPA actually took a more risk-averse strategy of becoming a co-participant rather than becoming the primary applicant on some of these applications. So that's one thing. The other thing we talk about is, if innovation is rapidly evolving, and there's a possibility of an error somewhere. So what NIPA is doing is also working on building a digital twin of our electric grid, where we can actually connect the asset to a real-time simulation model of the electric grid in New York, test if the device actually works within the given parameters, the thresholds, and then deploy it in the field. So we are saying, okay, hey, in order for us to be ready by 2030, 2040, 2050, are there things that we can do internally, improve on things, and then innovate what we currently have to leverage so we don't make any mistakes down the road, especially with the whole 2002 blackout and stuff. We want to avoid those situations, right? So we are being more innovative on those ends. So 2 things, how can we leverage existing technology and innovate to become more smarter? And the other one is definitely on resources, where every utility is going to face the same challenge.
Well, and you bring us to a great place, an additional topic that we actually did want to talk about, because all this funding is driving technology, it's driving us to change our strategy, or at least some of our short-term goals. But certainly workforce development and hiring is at a critical level in the U.S. across multiple industries, and I know the utilities are hit the same way, as are our ecosystem partners. You're hit trying to challenge to get people to come to work for you, the right people, and then get them trained up, the skills, working to get the right folks. Ali, I know I've heard you talk about Gen X and the millennials, and Gen Z, I think, is the next one coming. Let's talk a little bit about that. What should be on our minds, because our consumers are now driving a lot of things. How can we get those same consumers excited and prepared to come to work in the industry? Ali, I'll start with you, and then I want to hear this from everybody because you're all hiring.
Yeah, I don't want to repeat what I already said, but this, especially coming to Gen Z, they are more technology savvy, I would say, folks in the industry. Traditionally the utility industry has never been that sexy, right? It was, mundane tasks, you're doing your operations and maintenance. But over the past decade, if you have seen how the industry is completely evolving, and you have 50% of the workforce by 2025 retiring. So you have to fill that gap with now potentially millennials and Gen Zs, right? So I think the adoption rate of technology will be much greater going forward than before. But it comes with its own challenges, like cybersecurity challenges and the others. Now you're pushing now one thing that we can look at is today we have a zero trust policy from a cybersecurity perspective, where you have the firewall and stuff. But now the more edge applications you deploy, are you looking to even put your firewalls around those edge applications too, whether it's the IoT devices, whether it's your cell phones? So can you segregate those 2 separately and still have a more robust network that you can rely on?
Excellent point. Jitender, what are you hearing?
Yeah, I mean, I think this whole thing that's time that we're in terms of you know, hiring and et cetera. I think first of all, I just wanted to kind of add, I think this is an area that we have experienced you know, successfully you know, leveraging major Western government funding programs like this one. You know, we did it with the Italian government in the early 2000s, and that funding also resulted in lots of grants being issued to open and hire engineers, for example. You know, in fact, I think it's one of our largest R&D centers that still exists. So I think we have some experience in terms of, you know, what we're getting into in terms of being able to be successful in it. But I also believe we need to be refreshing the workforce that's there today with skilled, experienced people from the private sector to kind of expedite the learning that's happening. And then one last thing I want to add is a lot of the new generation really believes in efforts such as sustainability, right? They're very passionate to that. So I think that's also, you know, a good way to kind of get the next generation, because they want to work for a company that believes in it. So.
Absolutely. Chris, I know you're seeing this.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, definitely, Bobby, and we too are growing. But I want to sort of raise two different ways of looking at this. One is I do believe that as we become a more technologically innovative sector, we are going to become more appealing to the next generation. I know I've heard Ali say that before, and I agree. And I think we are becoming that, right? You are seeing both innovation and then the issues that the next generation wants to tackle. The environmentally awareness elements of the way they think is becoming a key component of the utility sector. So that there's that one side of it, and then the other side of it is, you know, we recognized at Anterix pretty early on that this evolution was going to take a lot of teamwork. And so we put together this active ecosystem. Telit and Hitachi are both sort of inaugural members of it. We have 100 companies that now provide solutions to utilities that are broadband enabled. And to me, giving the utilities that marketplace that they can go for resources, including personnel. We've got the Burns and Mac and the Black and Veatch and West Monroe and the companies that provide those types of services. We got Telits and Hitachis that are making, you know, products that are available now and immediately. And so to me, it's aggregating up those capabilities is a key element. And it is, to me, it's something we've really focused on and are quite proud of. But we're going to have to keep working because, you know, as we electrify more and more sectors, there's going to be a greater need for the utilities to continue to evolve. And so employment and employee, you know, access to new and focused and excited employees is going to be key.
It is. Ron, anything that you'd like to add?
Yeah, a couple. So from a corporate level, one of the key initiatives that Hitachi has is this notion of social innovation. And it's all about powering good with green and digital technologies. So if you look at more specifically the organization that I'm part of, we're called Grid Automation. So it's all things digital. And I think what we're seeing is obviously the social component, which at a corporate level, green energy, but also at a working level, the type of skill sets that we're trying to bring into our organization and also enable at the utilities, support capabilities like terrestrial intelligent infrastructure monitoring. So instead of having an individual go out and take notes of what a gauge reading is or something like that, instrument a substation, and this is critical in a distributed energy resource environment, instrument a substation with cameras and imaging technology so you can see that remotely and transition it to a data analytics infrastructure. So that all of a sudden you can get reports, you can do autonomous data collection, you can set alerts. So it's things that, you know, the next generation that's coming out of the universities that have a data science background, they understand how to use this technology and they can optimize the technology. Things that we used to have to come and look at maybe weekly, monthly, quarterly, with distributed energy, as you know, the power flows change throughout the web, we need to have a far more frequent method of looking at that. And the way to do that is leveraging some of the data science technologies that are out there. So if you look at growth in our industry, in our particular organization rather, it's bringing in those type of resources, and we want to make sure that we also bring those same type of resources into the utility world. I'll give you an example. I mean, just at the end of last year, one of my utilities in the Midwest relatively unexpectedly lost 200 employees to retirement because of the or the potential decrease in their pension payouts. So all of a sudden, all of this institutional knowledge was just gone. So without some type of digital tracking, whether it's a digital twin or just a data lake that has all this historical information, all that knowledge just walked out the doors. So we need to find a way to keep that knowledge in the institution, in the utility, to drive a path forward to sustain success.
Absolutely. And I do like what you said, Ali, about building that digital twin. I think that helps some with that knowledge dissemination and for the long run. A lot of, what we've talked about from all of this takes a smart network and a robust, reliable, smart network to do any of the IoT, any of the digitalization, any of the smart things that all of those consumers expect us to be able to do. Whether they use it all the time, that's their business, but they expect the utility industry to get to that place. I know as we roll out private LTE networks across the country and close the digital divide, you're also now reaching into some segments of the population that, one, frankly, didn't even know that this was an opportunity for them in their education and in their workforce, in their career path. So I think it will be important for all of us at UBBA and beyond, all of us in the industry, to redouble our efforts to reach the high schools and community colleges and universities. We do a fairly good job reaching the universities, but reaching those community colleges and even high schools with the curriculums that we need to drive the next generation of utility market, I think is going to be critical. So I'm putting all of that on all of you and everybody on this call to go do.
Go ahead. To interrupt, but I think I mentioned this in the last conference, but NIPA has been very active, especially with IIJA, in environmental justice and social and everything. We have programs that we go to educate high school students, colleges about STEM and what does that mean. We have we call P-Tech interns that are in community colleges that can come and become an intern at NIPA. But we actually had high school students that I mentioned last time was in cybersecurity. High school students that are interested in cybersecurity. When I was in high school, I was not interested in cybersecurity. I was like, try something else, right? Figuring out something else. But we have students that are, so looking at Gen Zs coming out, I think they will be much more motivated to use technology, rely on technology, and use it for their advantage, right? So when you talk about the digital transformation pyramid, you have digitization. I think the millennials and the Gen X's and work on it, putting the foundation out, and we're talking about private LTE, we're talking about IoT sensors, collecting all the data back. Eventually, it's collecting the data back. How you use it is digitalization, and that's where utilities mostly are today. And getting to that digital transformation is using all of the efforts that we did in the first two phases of the pyramid. Is I think the Gen Zs will come and use it much more efficiently.
Absolutely, Ali. You touched on cyber again. That has been probably the sexiest of things in our industry for about 10 years. And now, certainly, Jitender, you and Ron, you certainly see a lot more bad actors attacking. And I think even with some of the new funding, let's see what's earmarked towards shoring up and continuing. Cybersecurity is a continuous thing. So talk a little bit about what you're seeing might be some new opportunities and ways that you guys are approaching it.
Ron, you want to go
first? Ron, go ahead.
Sure. So obviously, there's a solution level, right? So there's staying current on what the latest technology is to implement into the solution space from a product standpoint or a solution standpoint. But the other thing is we've got a dedicated organization within Hitachi that looks after cybersecurity, right? So independent of each product group, all of our products go through that, but they also have service offerings that can go out and do cyber checks, cyber awareness, engagements with customers to educate, but also learn, right? It's a two-way street. And I think as you look at the cybersecurity space, the rubber meets the road at the solution, but you also need to have the engagement at the appropriate level to make sure that there's an understanding of what the threat area looks like and how you address the various threats, right? And some may be, you know, I think Ali mentioned the word zero trust. Some may be zero trust. Others, you may say, you know what, this is non-operational data. We can loosen that up a little bit. And here's the policy that we have. These are the security capabilities that need to be built into those solutions. So it's just like many other topics that we've discussed, it's a roadmap based on what you're trying to accomplish. But, you know, from a primary solution provider, obviously we've got to stay current on what the latest and greatest technologies are to make sure that we've got a cyber secure solution and then build on it with our services.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So Bobby, I was going to add, you know, I mean, at Telit Cinterion, you know, we became a new company. One of the things we did is one of the companies we acquired was Thales, their IoT expertise division, which includes the modules, the connectivity, and the next thing, which you just talked about, is cybersecurity expertise, right? So this is extremely important to the journey that we're about to embark on here in the U.S. And we also kind of shifted our global executive headquarters to Irvine, California. You know, the reason is to bring focus to the U.S. Centric challenges like we're talking about, as you know, cybersecurity being one. So that's kind of the things that we're doing to evolve, to kind of position ourselves for some of these concerns that we're talking about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Excellent. Thank you. I want to, we're about 15 minutes to go, and I'm going to check while you guys think about this next question or answer this next question. I want to bring it back to the city level. As utilities, as solution providers, how can we help reach into the cities that are getting a lot of this federal funding? They're having to manage a lot of this. What strategies perhaps can we offer or guidance to empower the cities, or for them to have that trusted relationship, Jitender, that you mentioned? What kind of conversations should we be having there? And I'm throwing that out to everybody.
I can start. I know you asked me about NIPA's customers, and I think I missed that, but I can loop that in here. So NIPA's customer base is a little different. We have 51 munis and co-op and large industries that we support with low cost power. So definitely, you know, compared to the investor-owned utilities, our customer base is completely different. So now municipalities and co-ops are also looking at what are the funding opportunities and where they can help address some of the concerns. So, you know, achieving goals for 2030, 2050, you know, net zero goals is not just pushing renewables out, but one of a customer is looking at how can we do load management at a municipality level. So imagine if all the municipalities are trying to control loads and manage loads, eventually you're still meeting those goals and probably even faster than deploying these new infrastructure out there. So NIPA actually has the key account management team that works with all of our customers, identifying what their priorities are and which section of the bills help them. So we have a monthly task force that we actually go through all the opportunities that come up, and then decide, you know, where should NIPA invest in, put more time and effort into, and that also includes into our customer space as well when they start looking at renewables and other aspects of clean energy technology.
Excellent, excellent. And so, Chris, I'm going to turn it to you. I'm sure you have some thoughts on the city level or the municipality level.
Yeah, I mean, so Bobby, yeah, it's a great question. I mean, it's part of what made these multiple tranches of legislation interesting is also part of what makes it complex, right? So the money in some instances flows, as we talked about, to companies or corporations, and sometimes to consumers, and in some instances to state or tribal bodies, or all the way down to, you know, to even the cities and municipalities. I think you just have to be prepared to educate at every one of those levels, not only educating your potential customers, but educating their customers as well. I mean, we do a lot of work at the NARUC level and with NRECA and NRTC and some of the organizations that do a great job rolling up some of the constituencies that would be hard to get to because there are so many of them. And so I think being able to educate and be prepared and and then leaning on your partners like Telits and Hitachis and Anterix and others, and then also leaning on some of the consulting firms. I've a number of the Deloittes and Accentures and guide houses, I think, have done a really good job getting up to speed and gathering intelligence and resources on this. But I think it's every tool in the toolbox approach. There are benefits. We do see benefits of deploying private broadband at a utility level. We just on Monday announced a contract with LCRA that looks a lot like Ali and I were talking before the panel began. It looks a lot like what NIPA does in the Northeast. They're going to serve, LCRA is serving a whole bunch of communities and providing, generating power and providing it to a bunch of co-ops. And so, we will see the value of private broadband sort of flow to communities. And our first 4 investor-owned utility customers, it was very similar. They will deploy infrastructure to areas where broadband infrastructure currently doesn't exist. And so there could be follow-on and flow-through benefits to those communities. And I'm excited and looking forward to that. To me, it's additive to the benefits that will flow directly to the utilities and their customers. But this is a sort of all hands on deck when it comes to getting broadband out and driving the solutions down to the city and community level.
Absolutely.
Just to add on a little bit to what Chris and Ali said, I think one of the key things, particularly for cities, is they don't have the same technical scope and capability to have a team that can evaluate solutions. So I think looking at partnerships and shared services models are going to be critical for that to be successful, right? Because it is a large undertaking to run a private LTE network or to build out your renewable integration strategy by yourself. So providing that guidance, and I think an opportunity like NIPA has an opportunity to kind of lead in that space, and we certainly would continue to work with folks like that. But thinking about different ways you can share the services, I think, is critical for success in the cities.
Yeah, and Bob, just really quick, just to inject a little bit. I mean, I guess I mentioned in the beginning, we're very flexible to adapt different business models to enhance our portfolio. So I think we're definitely willing to work with the solution providers, everyone on this panel, their companies, to kind of make everything successful.
Absolutely, absolutely. So as we begin to come to the end of our time, I want to kind of do some futuristic, kind of looking at the crystal ball with you guys. We talk a lot about use cases. We've talked about several of them today around DERMS and wildfire mitigation and such. We also have AMI 2.0, Advanced Metering Infrastructure 2.0. We have more load management challenges with EVs, the EV superhighways that are coming, distribution automation, certainly, even community solar and smart communities types of use cases that are coming. So, and we talk sometimes about, closing that digital divide with middle mile and last mile. And certainly that's been a focus of a lot of federal funding too. So do some it's not procrastination. That is not the right word.
I could do that, Bobby.
Into the future. And tell me what you see. What else should we be getting prepared for as an industry?
I'll jump off first, just quickly, and say I was at the Wireless Trade Association when we went from 2G to 3G. Right, we're talking about 5G right now. So the very first time that our consumer handsets got broadband, and within a year we had 1,000 different apps, right? And so what I see is when you take companies like Telit, Cinterion, and you take companies like Hitachi and others, and you put a new platform in front of them that's broadband enabled, and the need to address all of the use cases you just referenced, you're going to see an incredible explosion of innovation. And that's what excites me. I actually commissioned a study when I was at CTIA about what the use cases would be, and it was done by one of those giant consulting firms that I just mentioned a moment ago. They couldn't have been further off in their prediction of this, the size of the use cases and the apps. So I see that happening in the utility sector, and I'm excited.
Yeah, no, I'll jump in, Bobby. So chime in from both a Hitachi and a personal perspective. I think one of the things that gets enabled with an always-on connected utility is a better end user customer experience. So, in my crystal ball, I think one of the key things for the industry to start thinking about is how to better engage from a digital standpoint with their end user, right? I'd like to be more informed on real-time pricing. I'd like that experience to be much simpler and easier to determine. And when you have a broadband network deployed throughout the transmission and or distribution utility, I think you now have the connectivity to enable that type of functionality. So I think moving the utility and digitizing the customer experience is where I see the crystal ball in 2 to 3 to 5 or 10 years or whatever. And I think that's an important opportunity for us. And again, as an end user, I think it's something that I'm craving.
Yeah. So Bobby, if I can add, I mean, one of the things that we're doing, to kind of position ourselves also is we're starting to, after the 2 acquisitions, we're trying to reorganize internally to produce more software capability, right? This is going to be more important for a turning point in the energy space where a lot of the solution will be very much about software. So we're trying to, position ourselves from that perspective.
You're right about that, surely. Ali, what do you see?
All of the above. Right? Everything.
And you want it all right now.
I know, right? So one thing I would bring from a utility perspective is safety, right? That's embedded in our DNA, and majority of our assets are in remote locations. If you're looking to deploy IoT devices, make sure you have a secure network that even employees can make a phone call in case of an emergency, right? And that's the foundation layer that I think we're starting to look at. And then building on top of it, you share devices, whether it's DLRs and other IoT devices. What can you do? What can you put out there to help achieve those goals, whether it's your corporate goals, visions, your state goals, whatever. But also from a NIPA perspective is how can we help our customers achieve their goals as well? So we are definitely customer obsessed.
Absolutely. I like that, customer obsessed. I like that a lot. We don't have any additional questions from the audience. If you had one and you didn't get to type it in or couldn't make that button work, you can certainly send us an email and we can follow up with you from there. Before we close off, I just want to tell everybody who's listening is this conversation will continue in October when we all get together at the Utility Broadband Alliance Summit in Plugfest. These are the exact kind of thought leadership discussions that we'll be having there that we have on a daily basis. These are some of the key industry trusted advisors that frankly a lot of utilities and a lot of city leaders are counting on to help solve some of this. As they get handed a bucket of money, you can actually get paralyzed by not knowing what to do with that. And so I'm so thankful that we have great thought leaders like all of you there to help guide and to help share your knowledge for no money. Here's the knowledge we want to share with you, because I think that's what it takes all of us in our industry to go do. So with just another minute or two, I want to give you all a chance to give your final closing comments. And I'll come back to you, Jitender. Chris, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, Bobby. So mine will be thank you. When you and Ali and the board and Anterix was there too, when we thought about UBBA and envisioned its future, couldn't in our wildest dreams we would have expected and hoped that we got to where we are now. But 25 plus utilities, a whole bunch of solutions providers, driving thought, creative solutions to problems, identifying use cases. I'm super proud of where the organization is. And so just wanted to say thank you to you and Ali and the board for driving the organization to where it is.
Thank you, Chris.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, Ali?
I would just say thank you to all of our members, right? I mean, without the members, this is not possible. It takes time and effort to, that they have to put in, whether it's the Plugfest, getting all the panelists ready, scheduling these webinars, coming up with topics. Throughout the year, it's a lot of work that people don't realize that goes in. And thank you, Bobby, for spearheading everything. Without you, I don't think this was even possible. And Jitender, thank you for having us on the webinar today. This is definitely, like Bobby said, it's just a start of a conversation, and we'll continue this in October.
Absolutely. Ron, last comment?
Yep, thank you. And again, one of the things from this that I take away. It's exciting from an industry standpoint, in my opinion, to see an open, interoperable interface, certainly at a communications level. We didn't get a chance to talk about it in a lot of detail today, but also if you look at Goose and some of the other interoperable standards that are going to be required for renewable renewable integration, I think those are the things that are exciting for an industry, so that the folks like Ali and others in the utility community have options, right? And they can deploy technology options quickly and efficiently to improve overall operations. So thank you again, great conversation, and I always learn a lot. Hopefully the community found it useful.
Yeah, well, it sounds like we have another topic for another webinar there, Ron. But for now, Jitender, I want to thank Telit, Cinterion, and you for bringing this topic to light. But give us your final thoughts and comments on our topic today.
Yeah, no, again, same thing. Thank you so much. I think it was a privilege to be on this panel. A lot of talent, so much insight, so much experience from the whole value chain of the for the energy utilities. We're proud to have sponsored this event, but I hope this is first of many conversations that will develop into this new modernization that bills such as that IRA will help enable in the U.S. Right. So I just wanted to also thank you, Bobby, for moderating this. I think it turned out great, and we look forward to future more panels.
I do as well. You have my great thanks, gentlemen. Thank you for opening your kimono a little bit, sharing some of your knowledge, and helping us all grow for the future. I do agree UBBA is definitely the future of utility strategies and telecom, and we couldn't do it without all of you. So thank you very much. Have a fabulous day, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.